Good morning, Security Gang, and welcome back to the CyberHub Podcast. James Azar here, host and Chief Information Security Officer. Thank you all for tuning in this morning. We've got a packed show for Thursday, March 5th, 2026. Let me tell you, the cyber realm is heating up on the geopolitical side. It's also showing us the real impact of some of the challenges that are existing for many, many practitioners. I'm pre-recording this show, obviously. We may be missing stories when this airs. I mean, from the time we're pre-recording this to the time this airs, there's almost a full business day. So I just want to be mindful of that to all of y'all, that we could be missing some stories here. And if we do, we'll cover those on our Friday newsletter at cyberhubpodcast.com. So make sure you go subscribe there to get the latest. All right. Let's get into this morning show and tell you what's on this episode's hospitals reopening after a ransomware attack. Hacked traffic cameras were used in wartime operations in Iran. Iranian APTs are escalating against critical infrastructure. A zero-click mail server attack. Cisco warning about root-level vulnerabilities. All of that and more on this morning's show. Let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. But before we do, what would this show be without a double espresso? And there's a countdown. Do you guys know what that is? That's the Masters. The countdown shall begin in exactly 1 month. Augusta, Georgia will be the golf capital of the world for a week. 10 days, technically, but it'll be a blast. Coffee cup cheers to all y'all. My Lavazza double espresso this morning. One of my favorite cups. I've had this for years and I love it. Absolutely love it. All right. Let's kick off this morning's show. So we talked about this previously on the show. The University of Mississippi's medical centers have now reopened their clinics following a ransomware attack that forced temporary shutdowns of some of the healthcare services. This is an important reminder of how ransomware isn't just about data anymore. It's about operational disruption, especially in healthcare, where they feel like the hospitals and healthcare facilities are likely to pay out to save lives, because the decision is, do I pay them or do people die? And that's never a fair choice. Healthcare institutions are particularly vulnerable because patient care can't simply pause. This incident correlates with the broader trend we've been covering, where ransomware groups are effectively increasingly targeting hospitals, universities, and municipal services where downtime pressure organizations to recover quickly. We talked about this with the University of Hawaii Cancer Research Center. We've talked about this now with the University of Mississippi Medical Centers here in Georgia, in Texas, and elsewhere in the country, as well as overseas. There's been patient death due to cyber attacks. The mainstream media will never cover it, but we here on the show have talked about it extensively during some specific ransomware operations, where some patients were essentially denied care at a hospital because the hospital couldn't function, and the patients needed to go to a different hospital, and they perished on the way and lost their life. Direct result of a cyber attack. I mean, these cyber criminals should be charged with involuntary manslaughter at the basics of it, or if not, second-degree murder. All of that's there. Again, patient risk disruption and delayed medical services due to system outages are a real threat for hospitals, who have to create better mitigation plans, including segmenting clinical networks to prevent ransomware propagation across hospital systems, and building resilient backup plans in order to continue to operate at almost full capacity, even though some of the systems are down. Additionally, all hospital systems, the IoT and OT devices that operate, should always be on a segmented network, primarily air-gapped, and tied into a whole different sub-network altogether, in order to ensure that any access to that system could only be done through a backup switch. And again, that's available today. It's pricey to do, but it's available and can be done. So there's that. Okay, we move to the Middle East, where obviously, if you've been keeping up, Operation Epic Fury, and then Operation Epic Fury for the U.S. For Israel, it's Operation Roaring Lion, I believe. Have been ongoing. Well, now we have the breakdown of the campaign that killed the number one terrorist, also known as Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, and several of his government officials in the opening salvo there on Saturday morning in Tehran. Apparently, cyber operations there were a huge piece to it. TechCrunch reporting cyber operations did support military operations against Iran, including 8,200 in Israel, hacking traffic cameras and hijacking televisions, broadcasting messages in the surveillance, apparently, of the supreme leader over the last uh, 10 or so years. They've been tracking the movement by hacking security cameras and surveillance that the government put to spy on its people, was used against itself, essentially, in order to take out the supreme leader Ali Khamenei. General Kane saying in a press conference they want to disrupt, disorient, and confuse the enemy. And again, IDF then hijacking. We've talked about this here previously on the show, but as part of the operation of Khamenei, Israeli spies reportedly used information from hacked traffic cameras across Tehran, citing two anonymous sources. And then this has been reported widely in Hebrew. There's already like videos kind of showing the entire tactics that 8200 used in Hebrew. You can find those in YouTube, but they are in Hebrew. They haven't been translated to English. And we didn't have the time, simply due to some commitments I've made, to get it here on the show. We'll probably work on it over the weekend. But Israel has had access to camera networks for years. They've deeply penetrated mobile phone networks in Iran as well. According to multiple reports, the attackers breached a popular Iranian app. We talked about this here on Monday on the show. So, all in all, the surveillance that the Iranian government and the IRGC, well, not really the Iranian government, the mullahs and the IRGC have, and the Besiege, which is kind of like their enforcement police. Everything they put was actually used against them to actually track them and hit them and take them off the battlefield once and for all. And so when you understand that type of work, you understand how you have to kind of work on identifying the risks within your own environment. In some cases, I'm not saying like, state-owned governments are going to come after you and try to hit your anyone in your org, but the same tactics that are coming to light now are obviously what's going to be fueling Iranian APTs, who are now escalating on their end their own attacks across the Middle East, which, with warning coming about escalating Iranian APT activity targeting critical infrastructure sectors. These groups have historically focused on energy, water, transportation, and government agencies. The correlation with geopolitical tensions here is clear. Cyber activities often rise during these regional conflicts, and the campaigns appear to prioritize persistence and reconnaissance rather than immediate disruption, as they try to they're trying to line up some sort of retaliation. The Iranians have lost all of their navy. If you own a boat, you have one more boat than Iran has at this time. Consider yourself blessed. If you have a aircraft, you probably have one more aircraft than they currently have. There's a few firsts that in a very long time haven't happened in war. One is the sinking of the Iranian ship off the coast of Sri Lanka by a submarine using a torpedo. That was something that was released yesterday by Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. And the additional one was Israeli jet downing a MiG-29 in a dogfight in the air. It's been a while since dogfighting's happened. It's happened in Russia and Ukraine, but it hasn't happened between kind of like these modern fourth generation aircrafts, which was the case here. And it was the first time in Israel since, I believe, the 1973 war that they actually downed an enemy aircraft. So lots of first there. Now, why does all of that come into play? Well, because Iran's trying to kind of build some sort of retaliation and build some sort of response, and they're trying to use cyber as part of that response. So they're trying to get persistence so that they can create some sort of rolling blackout scenario or rolling disruption. Primarily what they're trying to do is impact the energy market in order to push energy prices up, which they believe would put pressure on President Trump to bring a faster end to the war and the potential survival of the regime. That's their game plan. So if you're in energy, you should be deploying continuous threat hunting programs specifically focused on nation state persistent techniques tied to the Iranian APTs and Russian APTs, who we reported yesterday on the show, were supporting the Iranians in this. Now, I will say the following, something to keep in mind here, folks. The Iranian and Russian APTs, CISA and DHS, NSA, they've all released the like IPs, domains, everything you need in order to actually be able to defend against them and kind of be a little bit more proactive. But one thing that's coming with this war is hacktivism. And apparently, hacktivist groups have launched over 149 distributed denial of service attacks against 110 organizations, many tied to the war itself. DDoS campaigns are a very low cost, high visibility tactic used primarily by ideological groups. So for a few $100, you get to take someone's site offline and go, ha 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 ha. And you get to kind of say, brag, we took down their site. So some of these are Tunisian hacktivist groups with pro-Palestinian causes, which obviously are kind of like pro-Islamist. So yay, here they come. So in total, 149 hacktivist DDoS claims were targeting 110 distinct organizations across 16 different countries. The attacks were occurred by apparently 12 different groups. Of these attacks, the vast majority were concentrated to the Middle East, targeting public infrastructure or state-level targets. Europe was the target of 22.8%. And that's simply because France has already given up. So, why not? Finance and telecom were next up there. So the digital front continues to be there, according to our friends over at Palo Alto's Unit 42 as well. So again, make sure you're covered. Don't allow yourself to be an easy target if you can. Researchers are discovered a zero-click vulnerability called Mail to Shell that it's affecting the Free Scout mail servers. The attack allows attackers to hijack servers simply by sending a specially crafted email with no user interaction required. Email infrastructure continues to be a prime target because compromise gives attackers direct access to communications and credentials, the risk being full mail server compromise leading to credential harvesting and business email compromise. You should be isolating your mail server environment from internal authentication infrastructure. This is CVE 2026-28289er and CVE 2026-27636. So you want to make sure you get those addressed. Cisco, for their end, issuing a warning about a maximum severity vulnerabilities in the Secure Firewall Management Center that could allow attackers to gain root-level access. These systems often manage firewall policy across large enterprise networks, meaning compromise could allow attackers to manipulate security configurations, with the risk being attackers gaining privileged control over enterprise firewall policies. You should enforce strict network segmentation between management planes and production networks altogether. This is CVE 2026-20079er and CVE 2026-20131. We'll move on to a new Russian technique in deploying malware against Ukraine. For those that are eyes are focused on the US, Israel attacking Iran, if you just go up north just a little bit, Russia and Ukraine are in year 4 of this war. And the cyber realm there continues to not disappoint. Russian and Ukrainian hacker groups continue launching malware campaigns against each other as the cyber dimension of the war persists and even increases as there's stalemate on the battlefield. These attacks include espionage malware designed to collect intelligence rather than cause immediate disruption. Cyber operations being a persistent feature of the conflict risk new malware campaigns spilling into civilian networks and even global infrastructure. You should be strengthening your endpoint detection capable of identifying advanced malware persistence techniques used in that warfare. Those are getting updated very fast. So you should get with your EDR or MDR provider and make sure you're getting that coverage. Let's talk about the LastPass. So attackers are sending fake LastPass support email within existing support email threads to trick victims into revealing vault passwords. And by injecting themselves into legitimate looking kind of conversations, attackers are increasing the credibility of the phishing attempt and thus gaining some success. This tactic reflects the increasing sophistication of social engineering campaigns, especially in the realm of AI. Credential theft through highly convincing support impersonations are real, and enforcing support verification protocols requires independent confirmation before sharing credentials as a means of mitigation. but LastPass would never ask you for that. You shouldn't do it. But again, this is the fallout of the LastPass hack that happened several years ago, where they're still targeting those customers. So on the room, keep your eye there. The FBI and law enforcement agencies in the US and Europe have taken down LeakBase, a cybercrime forum that was hosting stolen credentials and hacking tools to take down as part of a broader international effort targeting cybercrime infrastructure. However, history shows that these marketplaces often reappear under new names, but again, maintain continuous monitoring of the underground forums to track emerging threat actor communities and make sure you're ready to mitigate when needed. And in the world of cyber insurance, Zurich is acquiring cyber insurer UK-based Beazley for approximately £8.1 billion or $11 billion. Zurich Insurance announcing the acquisition of Beazley, creating one of the largest cyber insurance providers globally. Cyber insurance has become a major driver in shaping corporate cybersecurity practices, with insurers increasingly requiring specific security controls before issuing policies. So all in all, we're seeing that also consolidate. Today's stories are highlighting three themes for me, folks. First, ransomware and operational disruptions continue to impact essential services like hospitals. You got to be on the lookout. You got to build resiliency. Cyber operations are becoming deeply integrated with geopolitical conflicts. Just look at what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, US, Iran, and Israel, and the Middle East. And the attack surface itself is continuing to expand from email infrastructure and firewalls to traffic cameras and IoT devices. Nothing connected is ever safe. And this isn't a FUD statement. It's just a fact. And so we've got to be better at blocking and tackling, making sure we're covering all of our endpoints with our EDR and MDR, making sure we're getting visibility and logs, making sure we're patching, working with our vendors, identifying weaknesses within our supply chain, working with our business partners to address those by finding more robust vendors and backup plans to make sure that we continue to remain an operational and resilient business even when these events occur. That's it. That's where we sit today. We sit at that intersection. And so these fundamentals matter. Thank you all for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe, follow, share, like, and comment. Check out cyberhubpodcast.com for exclusive content. Have a great rest of your day. Have a great weekend. We'll be back Monday, 9 a.m. Eastern with all the latest. Until then, stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.